of here!"
My older sister, Scarlett, barged into my room and yelled all of a sudden. "What's all this about? I don't get it."
"You really are clueless, aren't you? You're in our way. That's why I'm telling you to leave this house and go live somewhere else." "Yeah, that's right. You're not family, so you should leave,"
Scarlett said with my niece, Michelle. They smirked at each other and laughed together.
"This is my house, so I'm not leaving. You're the one who should leave,"
I retorted out of anger, but they were not listening.
"Your room is mine now, so get out. You can live in the yard, you old bat. Get out."
I managed to shove them out of the room and locked the door.
"It's useless, you know." "Yeah, that's right. We'll come back every day until you leave."
True to their word, from that day on, Scarlett and Michelle would come to my living space several times a day, repeatedly chanting for me to leave. In a fit of anger, I ended up selling the house. My name is Emily. I'm 25 years old. I work as a programmer, mainly from home. While my job is mostly done at home, there are times when I need to go out for work. There are just some tasks that can't be handled remotely. But my home is pretty much my workplace. Currently, I live with my parents, but I have a sister, Scarlett, who's 3 years older than me. Since childhood, Scarlett has been charming, with a lovable appearance that you could not help but adore. However, perhaps because of this, she became a hopeless, boy-crazy girl. She hardly went to school since middle school, and as soon as she graduated, she moved in with a man she was dating at the time and gave birth to a girl at the age of 16, unmarried. They did get married afterwards, but divorced 5 years later. She returned home with a niece, Michelle. The reason for the divorce was Scarlett's affair. She couldn't stay faithful to just one man and was secretly involved with several men behind her husband's back. At that time, I was still going to middle school and high school, and I grew to despise her. And for good reason. I had watched her careless lifestyle since those impressionable times in my last few years of elementary school. It made me view romance as something dirty, and I vowed never to become like her. Even after that, she kept coming and going to our parents' house with different boyfriends. I've lost track of how many boyfriends she's had, but she's now pregnant with her 5th child. At least this time she's married to the father, so the identity of the baby's dad is confirmed, at least on paper. Though the truth is unclear, that's what it will say on the birth certificate. My parents, as frustrated as they were, seemed unable to do anything about her. Every time she caused trouble, it just added to their worries. I was irritated with them too, but after all, parents are parents. I couldn't just abandon them. So, I still live with them. Dad's retired, and Mom has always been a stay-at-home wife. I'm the one financially supporting the family. Fortunately, I've been able to earn a decent income thanks to the skills I developed during my student days. I give my parents an allowance, which they seem to be passing on to Scarlett in secret. It's their right to spend the money I give them however they want, but I sometimes feel sad when I think about how Scarlett would not appreciate the money and use it as if she were throwing it away on the street. From as far back as I can remember, Scarlett was treated like a princess. My parents let her do as she pleased, while I was disciplined strictly. I heard that my paternal grandmother, who adored Scarlett as her first grandchild and spoiled her for her cute appearance, passed away shortly after I was born. So I heard that Scarlett became a selfish and unruly child, so they started to be strict, at least with me. But that was my parents' decision, and there was no way I could understand that as a young child. Why was I always the one being scolded, while Scarlett got away with everything? I've lived my life pondering that question. Looking back, I'm thankful it prevented me from turning out like her. But still, I can't help but feel a lingering resentment towards my parents. Yet, as much as they bother me, my parents are irreplaceable and dear to me. That's why we still live together. Scarlett knows this and uses them, bringing her children over to do as they please before leaving again. I would watch this happen with frustration but say nothing, fearing it would only complicate matters. I know that turning a blind eye to her selfish behavior only encourages it, but that was all I could do. Then, one day, something happened. A big hurricane caused significant damage to the house where I was born and raised. My father's family home was over 50 years old. Considering the age of the house, we were lucky it wasn't worse, but repairs were inevitable. The estimate came back much higher than expected. The house was falling apart everywhere, and fixing it would only lead to more problems elsewhere, we were told.
Why don't we rebuild the whole house?
I suggested to my parents. They were surprised, but at the same time pleased, and said as long as it was okay with me. After all, I would be the one paying, so they had no objections. Considering what lies ahead in the future, I want it to be a two-family home. My parents happily accepted the idea, thinking it would be better for the future, especially if I ever got married. I had no boyfriend and no plans for marriage, but my real intention was to have a separate space for Scarlett's family when they visited. All of Scarlett's children, except for the eldest, Michelle, are boys. It's possible they all have different fathers. Back then, she was quite promiscuous, having many flings with various men. The age gap between Michelle and the other kids is likely due to the 5 years Scarlett was married in her first marriage. I've heard Scarlett, who wasn't used to divorce yet, say she had to put up with it for a long time. Whenever I wanted to go out, it was always who's going to take care of the kids? Who are you seeing? When will you be back? It's so annoying. I think she deserved it, but anyway, Scarlett's first husband had a stable job and was much older than her. I couldn't help but wonder why they got together. He had a good income and seemed easy to control, so I married him. But then all he would do is nag at me. Do the housework, take care of the kid. How annoying. She spoke as though she was the victim, yet she stayed married for 5 years, which seemed miraculous for her. However, she had affairs with various men during that time, so the marriage lasted solely due to her first husband's patience. Eventually, he couldn't stand it anymore and divorced her. Though he probably had every right to demand compensation, he never did. Perhaps he realized the futility of fighting with her. I feel bad for him, but he was the one who chose such a woman to be his wife. While I sympathized with him, I felt that it was his responsibility for not being able to see her true colors. After that marriage ended, Scarlett literally went from one man to the next, giving birth to 4 more children with different fathers every year. All boys, aged 6, 5, and 4 years old. On paper, their father is the second husband, but who knows the truth of it all? Every time she gave birth, she would bring her other children back to our parents' house, and my parents would be busy taking care of the whole family. It was incredibly annoying. A disruption to my work. And my parents would want my help too. That's why I wanted any reason to build a 2-family home. During the reconstruction of our family home, Scarlett was unusually quiet. Whether it was because her latest husband was treating her well, or because it was right after she had given birth to her youngest son, I'm not sure. Maybe it was because there was no family home to return to at that time. Whatever the reason, she kept quiet, allowing the construction to finish smoothly. The first floor of the new house is for my parents. I made it a bit larger, anticipating Scarlett's family's inevitable visits. In the living dining area, I placed a large table so everyone could sit and eat together. There's my parents' bedroom and 2 other rooms for guests. The state-of-the-art bathroom has digital settings to control the shower as well as radiant heat floors. Of course, the kitchen is equipped with a dishwasher. When I was discussing the layout with the architect, he said,
"It's so nice of you to do all this for your parents."
But if I didn't do all this, Scarlett's family would disrupt my life. That's how I truly felt. Between the first and second floors, there's a door that allows passage, but it's usually locked. I can communicate with my parents via a monitored doorbell, which allows us to live separately with peace of mind. The new life in the new house began. It was truly comfortable. True to their word, from that day on, Scarlett and Michelle would come to my living space several times a day, repeatedly chanting for me to leave. About a month into this new life, a different kind of storm hit.
I'm so done with that man, I'm dumping him,
Scarlett said as she came over to our parents' house. The cause of the divorce this time was Scarlett's affair too. Rather than Scarlett dumping her husband, it was the other way round. He kicked her out. How many times? She never learned.
And can you believe it? He's asking for compensation.
Apparently, a paternity test for the youngest nephew revealed he wasn't the current husband's child. It's reasonable of him to demand for compensation. But Scarlett was furious as if it was totally unreasonable.
Plus, he's saying he won't recognize the kid as his own. Filing some paperwork to make the child someone else's.
She was likely referring to a disavowal of paternity. Keeping things as they are would lead to various complications in the future. I thought it was a natural course of action.
What a narrow-minded man. Good thing I found out quickly. I feel so relieved breaking it off with him.
I had no idea what she was thinking as she said that, but she looked like a huge weight had been lifted off her shoulders.
There's no way I'm going to pay compensation, and I'll make him pay child support.
It sounds impossible, but she's free to think what she wants. From that day on, the parents' household grew to 8 people, my parents, Scarlett, and her 5 children. I was truly grateful for building a 2-family home. That's how I felt from the bottom of my heart. But about a month after Scarlett moved back home, her family began to encroach on my space. I'd appreciate it if you didn't come in while I'm working. When I said this to Scarlett, she replied,
You can't expect small children to understand that. You'll get it when you have kids of your own.
Far from stopping them, she practically encouraged them to invade my living space. The most unruly is my 12-year-old niece, Michelle, who is the eldest child of Scarlett's. She's the spitting image of her mother. Whenever I was away, she would take clothes from my closet without permission. No matter how much I told her to stop, she wouldn't listen. Of course, telling Scarlett did no good. She would blame me for not giving her adorable child anything. Now, my parents have left the door between our households unlocked, allowing Scarlett's family free rein to enter my room as they please. I protested to my parents, but they only apologized without taking further action. It interfered with my work, and I couldn't live in peace. Just when I was at my wit's end, Scarlett and Michelle made an outrageous demand.
Hey, you, get out of here!
She yelled as she barged into my room. What's all this about?
I don't get it. You really are clueless, aren't you? You're in our way. That's why I'm telling you to leave this house and go live somewhere else. Yeah, that's right. You're not family, so you should leave,
Scarlett said with Michelle. They smirked at each other and laughed together.
This is my house, so I'm not leaving. You're the one who should leave,
I retorted out of anger, but they were not listening.
Your room is mine now, so get out. You can live in the yard, you old bat. Get out.
I shoved them out of my room and locked the door.
It's useless, you know. Yeah, that's right. We'll come back every day until you leave.
True to their word, from that day on, Scarlett and Michelle would come to my living space several times a day, repeatedly chanting for me to leave. I protested to my parents again, but they just apologized as always. Though they didn't say it, I could tell they wished I would just leave if it meant Scarlett's family would settle down a bit. So that's how it was. I felt something break inside me. I've had enough. There was not a single person in this house who was on my side. Fine, I get it. With that, I turned my back on my parents and returned to my room. I wasn't going to let Scarlett have her way. But I lost attachment to the house. I started preparing for what was to come while ignoring Scarlett and Michelle, who barged in every day. And 10 days later, I was ready to leave the house with my things packed.
I'm leaving, but I want nothing to do with what happens from here on out.
Upon hearing this, Scarlett and Michelle high-fived each other in triumph.
Who cares?
Now we can live comfortably as a family.
Good riddance. Thank you for everything.
I thanked my parents. They looked troubled, but there was a look of relief in their eyes. Thinking back, it's always been this way since childhood. Scarlett would throw tantrums and I would put up with it. Then, my parents would look relieved and apologize for making me put up with it, but that was it. Just words. Remembering this filled me with frustration and emptiness. I couldn't believe my parents' attitude remained unchanged even in the face of such a huge problem. Thanks to this, I feel I made the right decision. I couldn't help but laugh. I decided to cut ties not just with Scarlett but with my parents too. I had always thought that I owed them for raising me and that they are my parents who share the same blood as me. But blood relations mean nothing. That's what I believe now. Everyone in this house is a blood relative of mine. Yet, not one of them was on my side. I left the house keys on the table and walked out alone. In the meantime, I decided to live in a short-term apartment. There was a lot to do. I'm behind on my work because of them. I was going to rebuild my life from here and walk toward a new future. A week after moving into the short-term apartment, my phone rang loudly at night. It was from my parents' landline, but Scarlett was on the phone. She was yelling, but I couldn't catch what she was saying. Holding the phone slightly away from my ear, I realized I didn't know Scarlett's number. I was silent for a long time and I finally stopped hearing her voice. Perhaps she tired herself out from the yelling. Well, it seems we can finally talk.
Hello, what do you want? This isn't about wanting something. What do you think you're doing?
I pretty much knew what this was about.
The real estate agent told me today that the house is up for sale.
Yes, that sounds about right.
I put it up for sale recently, so I was expecting this. How dare you do something like that without my permission? This is not a joke. Cancel it right now.
The joke is on her, really. Why would I need her permission to sell that house? She has no rights to that house. I decided to explain it to her.
That house was originally mine. I built it with my own money, and it's in my name. So, I can do whatever I want with it. Understand? Lies! All lies! It's not a lie. Why don't you check with Mom and Dad?
She seemed to think for a bit before saying,
Even if that's true, the land belongs to Mom and Dad. I bought the land too. So, the land is also in my name.
When we decided to rebuild the house, I paid my parents half the value of the land in cash. I did this because the land's inheritance was supposed to be split between Scarlett and me. Perhaps my parents had hoped to eventually leave everything to Scarlett. But things changed when I decided to build the house there. Originally, I had the right to half of that land. So, I paid for Scarlett's share and bought it all, putting it in my name. I had to ensure she couldn't claim any rights to it later and try to live there. I simply told Scarlett that I bought the land from our parents with cash, so now it's in my name. She continued to scream that it was all lies. But I told her if she couldn't believe it, she should check the papers and hung up. By now, my parents are probably being screamed at by her. But that doesn't concern me. I merely told Scarlett the truth. What happens after that is up to Scarlett and my parents. That's all I need to concern myself with regarding the house for now. I'm sure that in a few days I will get another phone call from Scarlett complaining about the other issue. As expected, 3 days later, another call came from my parents' landline. I answered it, and as expected, it was Scarlett on the phone, ranting as usual. I waited quietly until she calmed down a bit. Speaking up in such situations only leads to trouble.
Hello, what do you want? It's not that I want something. What do you think you're doing?
The same exchange as last time, almost like déjà vu.
What do you mean? If it's about the house, I thought I explained that already. Not the house. What did you tell my husbands?
So, it was about that. But referring to them as husbands rather than husband is so like her.
I don't think I said anything strange. Lies! All lies!
Why does Scarlett always accuse me of lying?
They're saying they won't pay child support because of you. Well, no one wants to pay child support for someone else's child, right? That's none of your business.
Maybe it was none of my business. Perhaps that's true. But I did check with the individuals who are said to be the fathers of Scarlett's children. I did it simply because I wanted to get back at her. After all, she tried to take away the house I painstakingly built as my final abode. Isn't some form of payback justified? First, I contacted Scarlett's first husband, Michelle's father. I told him about Scarlett and her kids coming to my house. Apparently, they didn't have a place to live, but I thought perhaps Michelle would be better off living with her father. So, I asked him about that. But he has remarried since then and now has a new family. He hasn't seen Michelle since he divorced Scarlett. He's been paying child support and wants nothing more with them. That's what he said. So I just responded with relief in my voice.
Good, if you're paying child support, then Michelle must undoubtedly be your child.
When Scarlett's first husband asked what I meant, I added, flustered.
Well, she was kicked out because the child she had recently wasn't her husband's, so that made me wonder.
I ended the call by saying that I was pretty sure it had nothing to do with him and told him not to worry. Apparently, he told Scarlett that if Michelle wasn't his child, he wouldn't pay child support anymore and have Scarlett pay him back for all the child support he had paid until then. He also stopped the payments for the time being, until the DNA test results were in. It seems that's what Scarlett was told. Well, if Michelle is indeed his child, there should be no problem, seeing as the payments would continue. Next, I called Scarlett's second husband. He is the legal father of the 3 eldest nephews. I told him the same thing, suggesting the kids might be better off with their real father. Especially given her recent divorce, I added. If the 3 boys were indeed the children of Scarlett's second husband, they would be better off with their real father than with Scarlett. After all, she's not a good mother. The outcome was the same. The second husband stated that if the children were not his, he would not pay child support. If they were his, he would take them in. That's what he said. Either way, the child support Scarlett had been receiving would stop coming in. This seems to be her biggest concern. The child support for 3 children amounts to a considerable sum. If that were to happen, Scarlett could give up raising the 3 children, but she would also lose all kinds of financial aid related to children from the government and other sources, along with the child support. If the children were not the second husband's, she could still receive other forms of assistance from elsewhere, but no child support from her ex-husband. Either way, she's in a tight spot. This was what Scarlett protested about.
If the money stops coming in, you'll have to pay for it.
She said that, but I have no obligation to do that. My actions were purely out of concern for the fate of Michelle and my nephews, who seemed to be losing their home, and I consulted with the individuals thought to be their fathers. It was out of affection as an aunt, that's all. The other day, I reached out to the third husband, who had just kicked out Scarlett and the kids, and confronted them with a divorce. I told him that they were in big trouble, and I asked him if he could somehow get back with Scarlett again. Of course, he immediately refused. On top of that, he ended up saying that since he couldn't file for divorce yet, he asked me to tell her to hurry up, sign the papers, and send them to him. I also contacted several men known to have had relationships with Scarlett, telling them she had come back home and was in trouble. I asked if they could help, but it seems they've become unavailable. They likely fled to avoid getting entangled in the mess. If any of Scarlett's children were theirs, they might end up having to pay child support, and perhaps even face compensation claims from former husbands. Even I would decide to flee in such a case.
You've messed up everything. You need to pay compensation.
Scarlett continued to insist, but of course, I had no such intention.
More importantly, how's the moving going? What? The real estate agent told you to leave, right? It seems a buyer might be found soon. They've contacted me too.
It's true. The house has attracted several inquiries because it was newly built and meticulously designed. The location is pretty good too. Not too close to the downtown area but near a major road, buses are available until late, and transportation is quite convenient. That's why I wanted to continue living there too, if possible. In the future, when I get older, it will still be easy to go to places. There are hospitals nearby too. Above all, I thought of my parents first. My parents will certainly age before me. Yet, they chose Scarlett over me. Scarlett can take care of them from now on.
That's why you should find a place to move to quickly, or you'll end up homeless. Do something about it. I was kicked out by you guys and am struggling to find a place for myself.
Good luck searching. Bye. I said what I wanted to say, hung up the phone, and turned it off. I can't delete it yet as I need to keep an eye on how things unfold, but I'll cancel this cell phone contract once everything is over. Soon after, a buyer was found for the house without trouble. The real estate agent managed to evict my parents and Scarlett's family successfully. A little eviction fee and the threat of legal action seemed to do the trick. Surprisingly, Michelle was indeed the first husband's child, and the 3 boys after her were the second husband's children. Normally, that would be expected, but in Scarlett's case, even that is surprising. Thanks to that, Michelle's child support will continue, but the 3 nephews were taken in by their father. I'm glad about that. Now, my parents, Scarlett, Michelle, and the youngest child live in a small apartment. Scarlett contacted every man she was dating back then for child support for her youngest child, but of course, she could not seem to get in touch with any of them. The real father must be out there somewhere, but Scarlett has no idea who it is, so there was nothing she could do. The 3rd husband has continued to demand compensation, so Scarlett has reluctantly started working. She was caught after trying to evade payments and was told she'd face legal action if she didn't pay. So she had no choice but to work and pay it back little by little. As was the case when she got kicked out of my house, it seems that even Scarlett is helpless when it comes to legal matters, so she continues to comply and work to pay it back to this day. Scarlett, who got pregnant right out of middle school, got married, and continued to be a parasite for a long time, got a job for the first time. I don't know how long it will last, but I hope she does her best. Perhaps because Scarlett has quieted down, Michelle, who was just as selfish and spoiled as Scarlett, has started to take care of her brother without making a fuss. When they moved into their current apartment, Michelle said she didn't want to live in such a small place. When she asked her father if she could live with him instead, he rejected her request, and she came back with her head bowed in defeat. Maybe she thought she'd have nowhere to go if she got evicted from here. Now, she helps around the house and attends school diligently. Michelle is still in middle school. It's not too late for her to start again now. I hope she lives a decent life and not follow in her mother's footsteps. The reason I know about Scarlett and her family's circumstances afterward is that Mom called me once, asking for financial assistance. When I asked her what kind of help she needed, she mentioned general living expenses, which made me smile wryly. It seems she had completely forgotten why they ended up in this mess in the first place and wanted me to support them again.
You're still young, Mom.
So is Dad. If both of you work a little, you should manage to get by, I said, and refused to help them. My parents didn't pay my tuition from high school, because Scarlett got married right out of middle school and didn't go on to higher education. Fortunately, I had good grades and managed to continue my education through scholarships, but I never received any more financial support from my parents. Besides tuition fees, I had to earn any additional necessities through part-time jobs. Moreover, I contributed to the household expenses with my part-time earnings. So, if they were living a normal life, they should have been able to save a good amount of money. Dad worked for an ordinary company. If they were not wasting money, they should have enough savings for retirement. After graduating from college, I ended up paying more and eventually took on all living expenses. At the time, I thought it was normal for children to support their parents and continued living with them, despite my doubts. Mom did help by cooking, cleaning, and doing the laundry, which did help me out, and I guess I relied on them too. As long as I provided money, everything else seemed okay. I now realize I was in a codependent relationship with my parents, despite my being unhappy with them. I disliked Scarlett too, but I never mentioned that out loud. If I told them my parents would abandon me, they would surely choose her over me, or so I thought. The fear of being abandoned by my parents kept me silent. Making a significant purchase and then letting it go made me feel free from the shackles of family bonds. I've been envious of Scarlett for constantly getting attention, and I hoped that someday, my parents would turn some of that attention toward me. I suppose I tied myself down with such feelings. Cold as it may sound, my parents are still old enough to take care of themselves. If they really get into trouble down the road, I will reach out to them then, but not just yet. Any assistance now would surely revert things to how they were. They would probably pass on the money to Scarlett, who would then quit her job. This might drag Michelle down the same path as her mother. After all, the mother and daughter resemble each other a lot, both in appearance and character. Now, I feel truly free for the first time ever. From now on, I'll live solely for my own happiness. Fortunately, I have a job to support myself. I possess financial stability. Unlike Scarlett, who was often praised for her sweet looks, my looks are average. I think that might also be a reason why my parents were so fond of her. I've always harbored an inferiority complex towards Scarlett despite making fun of her for how terrible she is. But now, I can acknowledge that. The saying that letting go of something allows something new to come in is true, or so I've come to realize. I am taking in the freedom that fills my body as I surf the internet searching for a new place to live. I want to experience dating, which is something I have always detested, and hopefully get married. I'm sure I'll find someone to love. That's my main goal for now.